My name is Hailey Matthews. I'm 25, married to a man named Derek, and until a few weeks ago, I genuinely believed my family would always have my back. Or, at the very least, pretend to. I should have known better. But nothing prepares you for betrayal, not when it comes wrapped in familiar faces and is brushed off like it's nothing. It happened over the holidays. We'd gone back to my childhood home for the long weekend. Derek, my husband of 2 years, and me. I'd been looking forward to it in that naive way people do when they're desperate for comfort and nostalgia. I miss my mom's cooking. I miss my dad's goofy jokes. I even miss my little sister, Zoe. Or I thought I did. Zoe is 24, just a year younger than me. Growing up, she was always the one people noticed. The funny one. The pretty one. The one with the big personality and zero consequences. I was the responsible one. Quiet. Studious. The one who followed the rules while Zoe learned how to charm her way out of everything. But we were adults now. I thought things had changed. I was wrong. It was Saturday night. My mom had made her famous baked ziti, and we were all lounging in the living room afterward, full and relaxed. My dad was telling one of his endless stories from his college days. Derek was standing by the fireplace, sipping a beer and laughing along. I was curled up on the couch, watching everyone with that quiet sense of peace that only comes when you're surrounded by people you think love you. Zoe got up to grab another drink from the kitchen. At least, that's what she said. But instead of heading to the fridge, she walked straight over to Derek. And in one fluid, calculated motion, she put her hand on his chest and kissed him. On the lips. Right there. In the middle of my parents' living room. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. My brain couldn't process it. My eyes were locked on them, Zoe's perfectly manicured hand resting on Derek's shirt, his face frozen in stunned confusion. And then she pulled back, giggling like she just told a harmless joke. The silence that followed was deafening. And then my mother laughed. "Oh, Zoe," she said with a dramatic little wave of her hand, "you're such a goofball. Always pushing boundaries." Pushing boundaries? I stood up so fast I knocked over my drink. What the hell was that? Everyone turned to me like I was the one disrupting the peace. Zoe blinked innocently, her head tilted. "Relax, Hale. It was just a joke. You seriously need to loosen up." "A joke?" My voice cracked. "You kissed my husband." Derek stepped back, holding his hands up like he'd walked into a trap. "Hailey, I didn't see that coming. I didn't kiss her back. I swear." But my dad just sighed, as if he'd seen this whole act before and was too tired to deal with it. "Let's not turn this into something dramatic, okay?" My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "She crossed the line, and you're all just laughing about it?" Zoe rolled her eyes and sauntered toward the armchair like she was the victim in this scene. "It's not that deep, Hailey. Honestly, you're overreacting." Overreacting. That was always the word they used on me. Anytime I had a feeling. Anytime I drew a line. Anytime I asked to be treated like I mattered. "Why would you do that?" I asked her, my voice trembling. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Zoe just smirked. "Don't be so insecure. It's not my fault if your relationship can't handle a little joke." That's when I left. I grabbed my purse, stormed out the front door, and didn't stop walking until I hit the end of the street. The cold air slapped me in the face, but it was nothing compared to the numbness crawling up my spine. 5 minutes later, Derek found me, breathless and pale. I didn't know she'd do that. "I swear to you, Hailey, I didn't kiss her back. I didn't even move." I wanted to believe him, and I did. But the kiss wasn't even the worst part. It was the silence. It was watching my mom giggle and dismiss it. My dad sigh like he was inconvenienced. Zoe smirking like she'd won something. And me, the only one shaking, crying, and being told to calm down. The next morning, I tried to bring it up again. I sat at the kitchen table while my mom scrambled eggs like nothing had happened. "She kissed Derek," I said quietly. "That wasn't okay." Mom didn't even turn around. "You need to stop making everything about drama. It was just Zoe being Zoe." "Is that really your excuse for everything she does?" She finally turned, spatula in hand. "Maybe if you weren't so uptight all the time, these things wouldn't bother you so much." I didn't know what to say. I just stared at her, realizing something I probably should have seen years ago. Zoe was allowed to do anything, and I was expected to take it. This wasn't about one kiss. It was about decades of being the one who was told to keep the peace, stay small, be grateful. While Zoe got away with everything and was adored for it. And right then, I decided I was done playing that role. After that weekend, I didn't hear from Zoe for 2 weeks. Not a text, not an apology, nothing. I shouldn't have been surprised. Zoe had always been able to disappear when things got uncomfortable, only to reappear when she could spin the story to her advantage. And sure enough, when she finally did text, it was one line. Can we please not let one stupid moment ruin everything? One stupid moment. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading those words until they blurred. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be dismissed as too emotional or overreacting. Again, Derek was trying, he really was. He checked in constantly, reassured me, did everything short of printing out a t-shirt that said, "I didn't kiss your sister." But no matter what he said, the image was burned into my brain. Not the kiss itself, but the casual way Zoe had done it. Like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. And worse, my parents agreed. I called my mom a few days after the incident, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she'd had time to reflect. Maybe she'd understand how deeply it hurt me. Instead, she picked up the phone and launched into updates about her garden. No mention of what happened. No, how are you holding up, sweetie? So I brought it up. Again. Mom, I said, voice low, we need to talk about what happened. There was a pause and then a sigh. Hailey, are you really still upset about that? She kissed my husband. It was a moment. Zoe said she was tipsy, and you know she's always been playful. You don't need to take it so personally. I was quiet for a moment, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Do you even hear yourself? She didn't answer that. Just changed the subject. That night, I cried in the shower. Not the quiet, pretty crying they show in movies. The kind where your chest tightens and your shoulders shake and there's no air left. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Like everything I believed about my family had been replaced with something hollow. And that's when the memory hit me. I was 13. Zoe was 12. We were at a family friend's pool party. Zoe had snuck into the house and taken a bracelet from the hostess's daughter. When it was discovered missing, everyone panicked. And then Zoe started crying, loud, dramatic sobs, saying I had taken it. My mom didn't even ask questions. She pulled me aside, angry and embarrassed. Just give it back, Hailey, she whispered harshly. Don't make this worse. I hadn't done anything. But I handed the bracelet over anyway. I remember the weight of it in my hand, how cold it felt against my palm. And I remember the look on Zoe's face when I dropped it on the table. Smug, victorious, untouchable. That's who she was, who she still is. The next weekend, my parents invited us back for a family dinner. They said they wanted to smooth things over, get us all back on the same page. Derek was hesitant, but I agreed. I needed to see them again, not for closure, but for clarity. When we arrived, the house was warm and spotless, the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary hanging in the air like bait. My mom greeted us like nothing had ever happened. And then Zoe walked in, wearing my old college sweatshirt. The one I thought I'd lost years ago. The one she'd borrowed and claimed she returned. She looked me right in the eye and smiled like she owned the room. Dinner was painful. The conversation was forced, and every time I tried to speak, someone talked over me. When I brought up a work promotion I just earned, my mom blinked and said, "That's nice," then immediately turned to Zoe and asked about her upcoming art showcase, which, by the way, was being hosted in a coffee shop, not a gallery. But my parents were hanging on her every word, like she was Picasso. At one point, Derek gently tried to bring up what happened last time. My dad held up a hand. Let's not rehash that. It's the holidays. We don't need to dig up old drama. Zoe giggled. Besides, she said, it's not like I actually meant anything by it. And that's when I lost it. No, you just casually kissed my husband in front of our entire family and then vanished for 2 weeks while I tried to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The table went quiet. My mom's eyes narrowed. You don't have to raise your voice. Maybe if someone listened the first time, I wouldn't have to. Zoe's smile faltered, but only slightly. You're so sensitive, Hale. I said I was sorry. You never actually said those words. She blinked. Well, I meant to. And just like that, my dad pushed back from the table. I think that's enough. I looked around the table at the family that had raised me, shaped me, claimed to love me. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved the version of me that stayed quiet, cleaned up messes, and didn't challenge the golden girl. I set my fork down, wiped my mouth, and stood up. You've made your choice, I said calmly. Now I'm making mine. I didn't slam the door when I left that dinner. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. Derek followed me silently. He didn't try to stop me, didn't ask if I was sure. I think he knew I'd hit my limit. I think maybe he had too. We drove home in silence. Not the awkward kind, but the heavy, loaded silence that fills every corner of a car like fog. My fingers were clenched around the steering wheel. Even though Derek was driving, I stared out the window, watching the trees blur into shadows, my own reflection flickering in and out like a stranger. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom, pulled off my coat, and collapsed onto the bed without even turning on the light. The sheets were cold. The room was quiet. And for once, so was my mind. I wish I could say that was the moment I found peace or clarity, but it wasn't. It was just the first time in a long time I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my mom and a long text from Zoe. Hey, I don't know what else you want from me. I tried to apologize. You're blowing this way out of proportion. If you're going to keep holding onto this grudge, maybe it's best if we take a break from each other. I read it once, twice, and then deleted it. Derek came in with coffee. He sat beside me, watching my face. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded, but I didn't smile. Do you think I'm overreacting? He looked at me like I'd grown another head. No, not even close. That day, I didn't go to work. I didn't check my emails or fold laundry or do anything I normally would have done to keep the illusion going. I just sat in my living room with a notebook and pen and started writing down everything I'd let slide over the years. The list was long, not just about Zoe, though she took up a lot of space, but about my parents, too. How they never defended me when she lied. How they always chalked up her betrayals as personality quirks. How I'd learned, slowly and quietly, to never expect fairness from them. And then I wrote this one line, big and bold at the top of the page. You don't have to keep proving yourself to people who refuse to see you. I stared at it for a long time. That was the truth, wasn't it? For years, I'd believed that if I just worked harder, stayed calmer, acted more mature, they'd finally treat me the way they treated Zoe. That one day, they'd turn to me with pride and say, you matter too. But they never did. And they never would. Later that week, my mom called again. This time I answered. Hailey, she said, like I was a burden she was tired of carrying. Are you done being upset now? I almost laughed. I'm not upset, Mom. I'm awake. There was a pause. Then her voice hardened. You've always been so sensitive. You let things get to you in a way Zoe never has. No, I said, calm and cold. Zoe just never gets held accountable. That shut her up. I'm done chasing your approval, I continued. I'm done making excuses for people who hurt me. And I'm done pretending that this family is healthy. Hailey, don't be dramatic, she said, but it didn't sting this time. It didn't even register. I hung up before she could say more. That weekend, Derek and I went hiking. No phones, no family, no ghosts from the past hovering around the dinner table. Just us, the trees, and the kind of silence that felt like peace, not punishment. At the top of the trail, Derek stopped and looked at me. Do you want to cut them off? He asked quietly. I don't know, I said honestly. But I do know I don't want to keep losing myself just to keep the peace. He nodded, pulled me into a hug, and whispered, then let's find your peace instead. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone in the fight. I didn't tell anyone I was stepping back. No announcements, no dramatic texts. I just stopped reaching out. At first, I think my family assumed it was temporary. Zoe posted a picture of herself with my mom the following week, captioned Girls' Day 2 hearts, like nothing had happened. My mom commented, "My favorite girl." I stared at it for a long time. That used to be me. Or at least I thought it was. But the truth is, I'd never been the favorite. I'd been the fallback. The responsible one. The one who didn't need as much. The one who could be ignored without consequence. That was my role in our family, invisible until needed. Loud only when it served someone else's version of events. A few weeks passed. No one checked in. No one asked if I was okay. Except for my Aunt Carla. She called one morning out of the blue. She's my dad's younger sister, the only person in the family who's ever seen through the facade. "I heard there was some tension during your visit," she said delicately. I almost laughed. "You could say that. I'm not going to pretend to understand everything, Hailey," she said. "But I will say this, your mom and Zoe, they're really good at rewriting the narrative." That's one way to put it. There was a pause. Then she added softly, "Don't let them twist your truth just because it's easier for them to ignore it." That stuck with me. Because the truth is, I'd spent years reshaping my memories, minimizing my pain, dulling down the sting so I wouldn't rock the boat. I let them decide what counted and what didn't. But not anymore. Not long after that, Zoe sent another text. "Look, I don't know why you're still holding on to this. I told Mom it was just a joke, and she agrees. I think you're blowing everything up for attention." There it was again. The gaslighting. The implication that I wasn't hurt. I was just dramatic. So I sent her one message back. "You kissed my husband. You made a mockery of my marriage and expected me to laugh along with you. I'm not the one blowing anything up. You lit the match." She left me on read. A few days later, my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened to it, her voice was cold. "If you're going to keep punishing us for a misunderstanding, maybe it's better if you keep your distance. I'm tired of walking on eggshells, punishing them." That's how they saw it. Not me setting boundaries, not me demanding respect, but me punishing them by not pretending anymore. I didn't call back. Instead, I leaned into my life. I poured myself into work, spent quiet mornings with Derek, and found joy in things I'd forgotten I loved. Long walks, baking, Sunday puzzles. I started journaling again. And in the quiet of those pages, I wrote a letter to myself. "You are not too much. You are not overreacting. You are not the problem. You are simply someone who deserves to be seen and loved for exactly who you are." I didn't send it, but I didn't need to. It was the first time in a long time I truly believed it. And I began to notice something. The less I begged for their love, the more whole I felt. It was Easter when the invitation arrived. A pastel-colored card, overly cheerful, with my mom's handwriting in perfect loops. "Family brunch. We'd love to see you. Bring Derek. Hope you're not still upset." That last part wasn't even a joke. It was underlined. I held it in my hands for a long time, flipping it over and over. Derek read it silently, then looked at me. "We don't have to go," he said gently. "I know," I said, "but I kind of want to." "Why?" "Because I needed to see for myself that I wasn't missing anything." We showed up late on purpose. The front door was open, laughter spilling out. I could hear Zoe's voice before we even stepped inside. When we walked into the kitchen, my mom looked up and blinked like she wasn't expecting me to actually show. "Hailey," she said, smiling just enough to look polite. "You made it." Derek nodded hello. I hugged her loosely, already regretting this. Zoe was sitting at the table, drinking a mimosa, dressed like a magazine spread. She looked me up and down and said, "Hey, stranger." I didn't respond. My dad gave us the same look he always did, like he was bracing for impact. He'd been silent through all of this. Not neutral, silent. There's a difference. We sat, ate, talked about the weather. Derek made conversation to fill the gaps. Zoe talked about some influencer event she was invited to. My mom praised her for every little detail. I waited for someone to acknowledge what happened, to say, "Hey, maybe we didn't handle that right." But no one did. At one point, Zoe turned to me and said, "Mom was really hurt when you stopped answering her calls." The audacity of it stunned me. I set down my fork and said, "Were you hurt when you kissed my husband, Zoe?" The room went quiet. My mom opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't. Not this time." Zoe's face flushed. I told you it was a joke. No, it was a boundary crossed. And what hurt more than the kiss was watching all of you pretend it didn't matter. I looked at my mom. You didn't defend me. You didn't even ask if I was okay. I was trying to keep the peace, she said quietly. No, you were trying to keep Zoe comfortable. Silence. I'm not here to argue, I added. I came to see if anything changed. But it hasn't. I stood up, my voice calm but final. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Derek stood with me. As we walked out, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was walking away from a story that never really belonged to me. Back in the car, I exhaled. That was hard. Derek looked at me. But you did it. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing their approval. I felt free. The silence that followed Easter wasn't cold. It was quiet. No texts. No phone calls. Just space. Space I didn't know I needed until I finally had it. I thought it would feel like loss. Instead, it felt like clarity. Without the constant pressure to please, I started to hear myself again. Not their expectations. Not Zoe's snide comments dressed as jokes. Me. I joined a book club. I painted our guest room a ridiculous shade of green, just because I liked it. I called my childhood friend Jenna and actually told her everything. Not the polished version. The real version. God, Hail, she said. I always wondered how you stayed so calm. Zoe's been steamrolling you since middle school. That made me laugh for the first time in a while. Yeah, I said. But I think I finally moved out of her lane. Derek noticed the change too. He told me one night, while we were brushing our teeth, you're different lately. Lighter. I met his eyes in the mirror. I'm tired of holding my breath. That weekend, we drove out to the lake, just the two of us. No phones, no drama, just wind, water, and the sound of our lives finally becoming our own. We talked for hours about the future, about the kind of family we wanted to build, about what forgiveness looks like when the people who hurt you never apologize. I don't know if I'll ever get an apology, I admitted. Derek took my hand. Maybe you don't need one to heal. Maybe he was right. I began to accept the apology I was never going to receive, not as a way of letting them off the hook, but as a way of letting myself off it. That summer, Zoe got engaged. She didn't invite me to the engagement party. She did post pictures of it all over social media with captions like, surrounded by the ones who matter most. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I didn't care. Because by then, I knew the truth. I didn't want to be part of a life that only had room for me when I was silent and small. I wanted something real. Something I didn't have to fight for just to be heard. The wedding invitation came in the mail 2 months later. I wasn't expecting it, not after everything, but there it was. Cream-colored, embossed with gold foil, and Zoe's name in bold cursive, followed by her fiancé's in a font so small it felt like a footnote. It didn't come with a note. No apology. No explanation. Just an invitation. Derek watched me read it. You don't have to go, he said gently. I know, I replied. But I think I might. He blinked. Seriously? I nodded. Not for her. For me. So we went. Not to be part of the celebration. Not to mend anything that couldn't be mended. But to show up as myself. Whole. Unashamed and unafraid. The wedding was at some vineyard outside the city. Beautiful. Meticulously curated. Just like Zoe wanted the world to see her. People stared when we walked in. Zoe's eyes met mine across the crowd. For a split second, something flickered. Nervousness? Regret? But then it was gone, replaced by her usual poised smile. She never approached us. Neither did my parents. We stayed for the ceremony. Watched her walk down the aisle in a gown that shimmered in the sun. Listened to the vows, the applause, the laughter. And then we left. Quietly. No goodbyes. I didn't need to make a statement. My presence was the statement. And so was my departure. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch with Derek. The sky was turning pink, and the air smelled like cut grass and freedom. He looked at me and smiled. Proud of you. I smiled back. Me too. Because somewhere between the betrayal and the silence, the anger and the grief, I'd found something I hadn't realized I was missing. Myself. Not the version of me that played the peacekeeper. Not the one who kept folding herself into corners to make space for other people's comfort. The real me, the one who speaks up, walks away when she needs to, and no longer waits for permission to take up space. My family may never change. Zoe may never apologize. My parents may never see what they enabled. But I do. And that truth, that clarity, is mine.